Sawadee Krap and welcome to another episode here for the Funky Pod, Mindful Media and Communication. Hola a todos, ¿cómo estás? Ahora, I know it's not hard. I thought I'm doing the intro either in Spanish or in like Bruce Buffer voice, like, yeah, it's time, but I'm sick and my voice wouldn't let me do it. Otherwise, I would give Bruce Buffer, I'm sick. I run for his money, obviously, but hey, welcome to the pod. As you can see, we're talking about UFC Especial, UFC Noche. If you listen / watch this podcast, you're either a fan of mine, understandably, or a UFC fan, quite likely, or you're really into communication media studies. So we're bringing this all together. And already apologies for this unprofessional recording behavior. Me with a cup candy. I don't even know, my brain's not braining, not Englishing at all. But if I don't do this, I tried earlier, I'm coughing every 2 minutes, every 20 seconds actually. So apologies for having this in my mouth, but I want to get the podcast out, coherency and so on, mindset and all. So that's why I'm doing this, so that you don't have to listen to me coughing. Okay, let's jump right into it. UFC Noche, a special event in Sphere, not the Sphere apparently, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan still said the Sphere, while John Anik was like Sphere without the Sphere Las Vegas, Mexican independence, Viva Mexico. Let's break it down. What happened from a media and communications point of view, right? So we're going to focus on the good, the bad, and the ugly. Yes, it's a Western. I hope it played in Mexico. Maybe not. Maybe it played in the US. Who knows? But I'm still going to look at all those three things in terms of fighter communication strategies, UFC communication strategies, ESPN's, I think, communication strategies, and so on. Let's dive right into section number 1, intro, media framing, and agenda setting. Something that you should already be aware of because, well, I mentioned it many a times here on the podcast, what framing and agenda setting is. So let's just quickly recap here a little bit, right? So key theories right now, starting off slowly, basically like comparing it to a UFC fight, it's like the feeling out process, right? We're trying to get the distance, jab, looking like how are we moving. So that's what we're doing right now, talking about framing and agenda setting. So the UFC, ESPN, everybody involved in this whole thing, right? Riyadh season and whatnot, Sphere itself, of course, they utilize those narratives. In particular, framing. Let's start with this. Because they framed UFC Noche as like this huge landmark event. Like, using the Sphere technology, being the first sporting event in the Sphere on the same night that like there's Canelo boxing, right? They're taking on the same day that usually is reserved for Canelo's boxing events in the Sphere. First time ever combat sports in the Sphere. Bigger, better, once in a life. And Dana White, president of the UFC, said, we only do this once. It's so expensive. We'll only do this one time. Then we're out. It's a special event. So they framed this as like once in a lifetime event, right? And looking into this, we also saw that not only the UFC is framing it, but of course also the fighters frame it, right? Especially, of course, Mexican fighters. Most importantly, famously, probably Alexa Grasso. Alexa Grasso came into UFC Noche as the women's champion, as a Mexican fighter, fighting on Mexican Independence Day at this Mexico-themed event. Of course, something special. So, of course, the UFC, ESPN, but also herself positioned her as the national hero. Like, she's carrying the Mexican flag, all the other Mexican fighters too, of course, but her being the champion, being in the co-main event, of course, was spearheading this Mexico movement in this regard, okay? So framing and, of course, shaped public discourse, public perception, the way we see it, as like, okay, she's that Mexican superstar. She's going to be the favorite, probably. She won 2 fights before, or 1 win, 1 draw. So, it's going to be Alexa Grasso's night, was probably the perception of the majority of the audience. If you look into agenda setting, Agenda setting is like, as we know, right? We're building narratives. We're showing the audience what to think about, not what to think exactly, but what to think about. And when we look at like how agenda setting was used, when it led towards the fight, right? Maybe the media. Why did I say this? I'm actually, So maybe the media focused too much on this tech-driven spectacle over the fighters, because the build-up to the fight night, to the whole event, was like, Spheres, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be like fantastic, like all the LED, whatever, like, right? The dome is gonna show like stories. The focus was way more on the sphere itself rather than on the fighters, from my point of view. And also then in the post-fight reporting, lots of videos mentioned and podcasts and whatnot mentioned that like the star was the sphere. And when it comes to sports, my humble opinion, the venue should never be the star. The star should be the athletes, right? Generally speaking, humans should always be the stars. Even with concerts, the sphere amazing, probably, when U2 plays there. But still, the artist should be the stars, right? The venue should be supporting. So I wonder if the agenda was set in a way that the audience was expecting so much from the venue that the fighter's performance might not have been in the center of attention. And I think that's something that we might not want to have to happen. Apologies for the grammar, but I'm sick. Okay, we had agenda setting, we had framing, we know all those things. Let's dive into a few theories that we haven't discussed in that great detail before, which would be, first, it's called Proxemics. It's related to like body language, okay? So I pick one example first, and then I might go into more detail. So if you look at Sean O'Malley, right? Sean O'Malley, the champion, and if you look at like his physical behavior, after he then lost to Merab Dvalishvili, that's how you say it, Chelsonen, he left. Of course, I mean, I know he was sticking around in the octagon first, but then he left and he didn't go to the post-fight press conference, which usually people do, even if they lose. Like, look at Israel Adesanya, even after he loses, he goes to the press conference and sits there and takes questions and answers them, right? Which is cool. So Sean O'Malley left. I think Alexa Grasso left too after she lost to the bullet, to Valentina Shevchenko. And so we can look at Proxemics here that they play a role in like maybe how fighters are protecting their personal space and their identity as well in moments of, in this case, vulnerability. Yeah, so Sean O'Malley, Alexa Grasso to an extent, but more Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley is like this outgoing superstar. His walkout song, like, is Superstar, right? In defeat, apparently, he does not behave like a superstar, is what we can say, right? So he tries to protect his invincible persona by not being vulnerable, because he got his behind beat by Merab Dvalishvili there for 5 rounds, 4.5. And so he decided to not show his face later on, to not stick around, to not answer the hard questions, which is also something that shows us like how that persona functions, right? So he faced the criticism before, he said like all just built, manufactured, and now we can say, well, maybe, we're not sure, but he definitely didn't face the music now. Right? So we can look at like how in this case, like spatial relations between fighters, media and fans at events such as UFC Noche can influence like perceptions, vulnerability, and strength, right? If we look at different examples from before, for example, Valentina Shevchenko, right? She lost the first fight to Alexa Grasso, got choked out. She stuck around, answered questions. Second fight goes to a draw. She clearly won. There's just one judge, right, messing up. So draw. She stuck around. Was mad, but she stuck around. So she never dodged the media, never ran away or anything, never hid behind anyone. She stuck around to answer all the questions. Even previous opponents of Sean O'Malley, like Aljamain Sterling, did the same thing. He got knocked out cold by Sean O'Malley, stuck around to answer questions. But now maybe so it's that breed of new fighters, who knows, they're trying to, I know, protect their vulnerability, don't want to be vulnerable to the outside. I'm not sure what it is. Very interesting approach to how to handle communication, though, because not answering questions obviously also communicates, right? So I think there's a big learning here for especially those two, of course. If you're in those spotlights like main event and co-main event, something to take away there, I believe. Also, when we're looking a little bit more into like kinesics, non-verbal communication, if you will, look at Sean O'Malley, right? He has like this pre-fight swagger, like I'm so cool with all the colored hands. It's all cool, but then post-fight, even between rounds 4 and 5, he looked completely deflated, completely defeated, right? That's body language, that's communication. And I know it's easy to be said if you're getting taken down, thrown around for four rounds, getting beat on for 4 rounds. Of course, you're not like, let's go. But it's just interesting to see that even on this level, a championship fighter can shake it. Yes, I'm not hating on Sean O'Malley. Definitely wouldn't have done a better job, obviously. Just very interesting to see how this affects everybody. So if you're affected by negative body language, sometimes if your feelings taking over, you're like, I shouldn't have done that. Yeah, true. However, even professional combat sports athletes can shake it, right? So it's normal. It's normal to show your feelings, your emotions here and there, okay? And of course, your body language changes because, I mean, looking at Sean O'Malley, how he looked deflated, and of course after the fight, like even more so, leaving quickly, not talking to the media. And if you compare this to Merab Dvalishvili, that's how you say his name, Chelson. If you compare to Merab, I mean, Merab is like just this bundle of like energy, right? Just like bouncing around during the fight and like not sitting down and like not drinking water during the first break. I think like, yeah, he's like, yeah, I'm good. The lead up to the fight, he was all like doing skits on social media, right? Being funny, doing every interview possible, just being happy to be around. Like, it's my time, let's go. Like this positive body language. And of course, your body language, your nonverbal communication relies on your performance, of course, but also vice versa, right? Positive body image, positive visualization also then affects your potential outcome because you're more confident, right? You're communicating that I'm ready, it's my time, let's go, nothing can shake me, no one can take this from me. So it's also a very interesting takeaway here that I think also a way that Merab communicates, and even though English is not his first language, just like mine, his whole body language, of course, still translated, right? And it was like this energetic thing, like, yeah, let's go. Very, very, very cool. So the question that you can ask yourself, and I want to ask you, is how much does body language affect our perception of fighters as maybe like resilient or vulnerable after the defeat? Like, what do you think about Sean O'Malley right now? Do you think like, oh, he should have stayed for the media, or no, it's understandable? Like, what do you think? Like, let me know in the comments to the podcast. Really curious how you feel about Sean O'Malley, Alexa Grasso, but most importantly, Sean O'Malley, because, I mean, he was the biggest star on the card, right? So very, very curious how you feel about that. We go a little bit further. Well, I try not to cuss. We can also look at the theories of symbolic interactionism. We had this before a few times. And this relates to fighter branding as well, of course. So I stick with O'Malley and Grasso for a moment, just because it's the two biggest names, like main event, co-main event. But I'll give a few more examples as we move on, right? So fighters like Sean O'Malley, like Alexa Grasso to an extent, Valentina Shevchenko even more so, because she's probably the bigger star, even compared to Alexa Grasso, of course. They use symbols. For example, Sean O'Malley's tattoos, attire, hair, Alexa Grasso's cultural references, right? To communicate their personal identities beyond like just athletic ability. And so for Alexa Grasso, like she's a Mexican born and bred fighter, the never say die attitude and so on. And Sean O'Malley, like the cool dude, like just the superstar in the waiting and so on. Oh? So O'Malley also had this rebellious attitude to him, like this. He's the rebel who doesn't play by the rules, even though he plays very much by the rules. And this then contrasts with that clean-cut, heroic image that others have. For example, Alexa Grasso, right? So it's just interesting that like both champions coming into their fights. They're very different personas, but they're both very careful about crafting their persona, right? So once you're figured out who you want to be in the eye of the audience, you try to keep crafting it using symbols, for example, framing, agenda setting, and on all the things we discussed before. So symbolic interactionism is how fans create meaning out of symbols that you give them. Your tattoos, Sean O'Malley smoking weed the whole time, having the pink hair and whatnot, right? And of course, the perception intensifies in moments of triumph or loss, obviously, right? So how does O'Malley's leaving, running away now symbolically affect his brand? I mean, you ran away when things got tough. How does this affect your brand? The question. Is he still that rebellious bad boy, or is he just now like a whiny loser? And that's a question. I'm not trying to insinuate anything, right? But the question is really, does the loss diminish his symbolic strength now? And they always say it depends on how you bounce back properly. If he bounces back now and he knocks out Corey Sandhagen, for example, in his comeback fight, and everyone's like, yeah, let's go Sean 2.0, for example, I would assume, right? So that's a very interesting thing to think about. Like, how do symbols influence how we perceive fighters in this case? How does the perception change based on outcomes? Everything Sean O'Malley did was cool. Lots of fans with the colorful wigs in the stands, right? Now he loses, and it was like a lackluster performance, or he could get outclassed, out-wrestled by Merab. And then you saw the picture of like the fans gone from the arena, but just the wigs still in the stands. So does it show us that the fans are already giving up on him? Or were the fans really fans of his, and they were just fans of the hype train, right? Of the symbols, rather than of the fighters himself. Very, very interesting thing to look into, I believe. And I'm, again, very curious to hear, like, are you a fan of the fighter, a fan of the spectacle, a fan of the hype, which is not a bad thing, because, you know, you can get caught up in the hype, which is very cool. You're like, yeah, let's go, I'm so enthusiastic, ooh, let's go. So let me know what's more important to you when you're watching sports, combat sports in general. That feeling of being part of something, or the actual performance? Shout out in the comments. It'll be really interested to hear that. And I have two more, I think, for you. Because again, I'm sick. Oh, thank you. So I keep it short this week. But one theory I really like is the dramaturgical theory. So dramaturgical theory, as you probably can guess, is like about drama. And who doesn't like drama in their lives, right? This guy. So the dramaturgical theory, we only had it once before in the podcast, talks about front stage and backstage personas in everybody's life. So we have front stage personas that we show everybody. We have backstage personas, like how we are when nobody's watching. Okay. So UFC fighters, of course, have that too. Like O'Malley is like this flamboyant, like in the octagon, like super confident, unless he fights Merab Dvalishvili. And yeah, it's like this very carefully crafted performance for like public consumption. He knows exactly who he wants to be in the eye of the beholder, in your eye, right? While his retreat after losing represents a slip into like the backstage persona, where like the walls come down a little bit, or maybe even more up, but he tries to protect like his backstage persona from the public eye. He doesn't want anyone to see it, right? We compare this now to Merab, for example, who's always in your face, who's like has a super straightforward social media presence in terms of like just letting everything out. He's doing lots of stuff, and of course he crafts his persona too, but it's not like, he's not trying to look tough, he's not trying to look cool. I was on an almost cuff. But he just gives you silly stuff, he gives you serious stuff, he gives you everything. He's a lot, which also leads to crafting a persona, but it's just like, take everything from me, right? So there's a very much of a blurred line when it comes to front stage and backstage, while in Sean O'Malley's case, front stage, backstage seems to be like very carefully distinct, right? Front stage, here, swagger, cool, all those things. Backstage, I'm not showing anyone how I really feel, right? And it's also interesting, like what's better is the question, right? What's easier? Maybe it's easier to just be who you are the whole time, but then again, do you want everybody to see how you really feel in your darkest hour, right? If you just lost the championship, for example, do you really want people to see how you feel, how much it meant to you, or how much it didn't mean to you, for example. Right? So that's an interesting question, like how much of the backstage persona are we willing to offer? Should we curate a careful front stage persona like actors do? Should we not? What's better for your own personal mental health, for example? There's no correct answer, by the way, right? So I'm very curious to hear like what you think about it. And of course, in this regard, being at the Sphere also added to that, because of course the Sphere was like built as this huge, amazing stage. So if you're fighting in that stage, if you're performing in that stage, of course, you also want to add like something to this amazing performance, right? So you want to have like this awesome, outgoing, flamboyant, like extravagant front stage persona. And then if things don't go your way, you might be even more deflated, right? Fair point, I think. So let me know what you think in this case. And like front stage, backstage, close together, blurred lines, or like being distinct is a good thing. So that then in your private life you can be completely different and no one's really bothering you. Like a little bit like wrestlers, pro wrestler, like the kayfabe, right? So then in private life no one bothers you, for example. Like what do you think is the better way to handle this? What do you prefer to see from your fighter that you follow, that you like? And what would you do if it would be up to you? Again, shout out in the comments. Really curious to hear what you think. The last theory I want to discuss with you, and we had it before 2 or 3 times, is the parasocial interaction theory, which relates to how we consume media, like media consumption. So your fans, of course, create emotional connection with fighters like Sean O'Malley, like Valentina Shevchenko, like Alexa Grasso, like Diego Lopez now, of course. Diego Lopez, insane performance. And yeah, for O'Malley, because I just talked a lot about him the whole time now. So O'Malley has like this carefully crafted social media presence, as we just discussed. And the pre-fight interviews are very, very confident, right? I'm going to knock this dude out and so on. And post-fight is completely absent. So this contributes to the parasocial relationship where fans feel connected to him or even less connected. It's like, hey, I thought I know you. And so you consume lots of content means you have a connection to someone who doesn't even know you. That's parasocial interaction theory, okay? And now if this person acts in a way that you did not expect, like, hey, I thought you're cool, but now you're just disappearing. Damn, that, why did I like you? Like, that kind of feels wrong. It feels weird, okay? That's how the parasocial interaction can have an impact here, because you thought you know the person, now they're acting in a way that you didn't expect, and maybe you like them less, you follow them less. Maybe it even hurts a little bit because you feel disappointed, okay? On the other hand, for example, now to also talk about the winners, like Valentina Shevchenko, like, right, graceful as always. Like she won, boring fight, yes, but she won. And then she spoke different languages, Spanish. She spoke Thai as someone who records this podcast in Thailand. Very much appreciated. D-Mark, from Valentina, D-Mark. But this just shows like that she's really more in touch with the fan base, maybe. And you're like, maybe she just beat Alexa Grasso, but actually she's kind of cool. She said she speaks Spanish to the Spanish fans. She said thank you for your support. I know I beat your fighter, but still appreciate you and all those things. So, kind of cool, right? Of course, it's also easier to do this when you're winning rather than when you're losing, right? Obviously. So then Alexa Grasso, being that Mexican fighter, never say die, then not doing post media maybe also leaves a little bit of a bitter taste, right? Because, I mean, you build as like this never say die fighter that goes through adversity and always keeps clawing and climbing, and then it doesn't go your way, which is, of course, terrible. But then you're disappearing. Right? So, it's hard to blame them because they just lost their titles, what they really worked hard for. But it's also like, your fans might have deserved better. Right? And now this parasocial interaction might suffer from that because you're like, hey, I thought I know you, but maybe I didn't really. And maybe then you have a second thought, third thought, and so on. So that's something that I think is just fair to consider, to look at, like when it comes to how do fighters communicate, how does the UFC, the ESPN, and so on communicate. And of course, especially in this digital age that we're in, right? I mean, fighters are no longer just athletes. Obviously, they're media personalities, they're entertainers. Like every move of them is like in some shape or form on social media or wherever. Right? Every post, every gesture, everything communicates to us, right? It's part of a very complex narrative. Like we're paying attention to everything because we're so much invested in MMA, the fighter, and so on. Okay, so before I start coughing too much now, I'm signing off here. Let me know what you think about UFC Noche, about the communication involved in UFC Noche. Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy the event? Did your favorite fighter disappoint you? Like, share, subscribe. Oh my God, I'm sick. A like for being sick. If I get, I don't know, 100 shares, I will be less sick. Until then, take care, stay safe, keep your guard up. Sorry, cup.